What is best in life? To crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and to hear the lamentation of their women.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
All right, what is it? Sunday night? Is it Sunday night already? That means it's the Sunday night Radio Baloney Live. I am your host, Richie Baloney. I hope everybody's having a good time. Hope everybody's had a good weekend. Great weekend for everyone. All right. I guess we got to do this. All right. Do a quick roll call before we get started. We got Spambot. We got Ezra. It looks like Ezra them got the first like on YouTube. That means double good karma. Double good karma. Can you believe that? Also on Rumble as well. Oh my God. Rumbum, Spambot. We got Rosie. We got all the teams coming in. Good to see you guys. All right. Let's first get to the menu. I mean, obviously, the big news is we're going to start out with Canadian news again, obviously, because that's where the news is happening, at least for me right now. Canadian election has been called finally. So, yeah, we'll go through it. My thoughts are going to go through polling and what I think is going to happen. And, yeah, you're going to be brought up to date on all of this stuff. Of course, this is going to include talking about Mark Carney and Pierre Poilievre and just going through general election stuff. We got a little bit of stuff on the Tesla, the weird Tesla cultural revolution, Maoist cultural revolution around Tesla, which is just the weirdest thing. It really does show you that the modern left has no longer really functions as an ideology. It's just kind of a feeling almost, right? There's no principles involved anymore. It's just whatever the group is doing, and it's all top down, of course, from media and politicians and corporations, but just whatever is kind of the leftist feeling thing, they just do that. It's just become fashion at this point. It's an amazing thing. I mean, they were going on forever about their electric cars. Right? All right. Then we've got, let's see, we've got a little bit of stuff on Trump here. We've got a bit of woke mind virus, because that never gets old, or it actually does get old, but it continues to get old, but it's still fun to look at and make fun of. What do we got here? Then we've got the last tab, which is just a bunch of stuff. But I've got polls. I've got all kinds of stuff for Canada. We're going to go over all of that. We're going to get deep into Mark Carney. We're going to take a little bit of a look inside of his book. Yeah. So we got lots. We got lots. All right. But back to sanding, our educational sanding video, instructional sanding video very quickly. All right. Let's get to the chat, and then we'll get in with all of our news. So it looks like Spambot saying the post is working on X. Good. Let's see. As in them says, hi, Warriors. Let's see. Rumbum says, shit stream starting. Gotta down this bottle of syrup and declare, I am all that is man. And if you get that reference, you are awesome. You know what? I'm not sure that I do. It feels vaguely familiar. Spambot giving away more memberships? Holy jeez. If you're watching this right now and you're not a member, you're lucky. Very lucky, because Spambot has been extremely generous. Let's see. Spambot says he triggered one more at the end of the last stream, because he did 3 last stream and 5 the stream before that. So Spambot is very awesome and very good for my channel. But he did one at the end of the last stream that didn't get awarded at that time. Oh. I don't know what to do about that. Let's see. Looks like Us and Them is joining us on Rumble, because really Rumble's the best place. We always have way more people over on Rumble, and that's where all the chat is. And, I mean, I value everybody who watches on YouTube. Know that you are valued. You are loved. But it's just more fun over on Rumble. YouTube doesn't let anybody know that my streams are even happening. So Let's see. As of them says, are you feeling better, man? You weren't feeling the best the other night that I was listening to you. No, I was feeling terrible, and I felt terrible all day yesterday. Actually, worse yesterday, and I did nothing. I just lay around in bed all day, and I watched boxing, and it is actually quite nice. I really hate having any day where I don't get some work on the channel done, but actually, I did do a little bit, like 5 minutes yesterday. But yeah, I'm feeling better than I did yesterday, for sure. As I'm said, sounding better. Yeah, I feel a lot better than I did yesterday and a lot better than I did on Friday. So I don't know. I've had this thing. It just kind of keeps coming and going. A lot of people have had it around here. Let's see. Something about a manatee with scuba gear? I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. Rosie says, wonder if yellow nail polish is hard to find. You know what? I never noticed her nail polish. I never noticed. For some reason, I never noticed the nail polish. Isn't that weird? Rumbum says, Super Troopers is the reference. Okay. You know, I don't think I've actually ever seen that. I know. It's bad. That's wrong with me. It's wrong. Spambot said 4 last stream. 4. Not 3. 4. And then 5 the stream before. That's like 9. Not like 9, it's 9. Boat says that last one might have been awarded to someone watching the post-stream upload. Maybe, yeah. Rumbum says, you are loved. We just have concerns with your life choices. Rumble over commies is a no-brainer. Well, it's true. Can't argue with that. Nobody could argue with that, obviously. All right. Should we get to it then? I'm still not feeling top drawer today, but we'll get through this as well as we can. Caffeine, that fixes everything. I had some Buckley's earlier and took a nap. Is it Sunday? Let's see. Buckley's seem to help, actually. The nap seemed to help. All right. So heading to the polls. Mark Carney calls April 28th election. So there he is, the Canadian Mr. Burns, the globalist hobgoblin, Mark Carney, the man who just seems incapable of ever telling the truth. The guy who just parachuted back into Canada after living abroad for, most of his adult life, it seems. Parachuted in with the backing of Trudeau's people, Gerald Butts and Katie Telford. The liberal establishment fell into the loving arms of the Canadian media and essentially was just declared prime minister. I mean, there was, I guess you could call it a leadership race. They kicked out the only 2 people, Chandra Arya and Ruby Dalla, who would have asked him any questions, who would have pushed him at all, demanded anything from him. They kicked them out of the race. So then the ones that were left over just kind of lay down. They didn't do anything. They didn't challenge him, nothing. They weren't even trying to win, obviously. The whole thing was a charade. Mark Carney got through the whole process of just parachuting back into Canada with his 3 passports, parachuting back into Canada and just becoming, anointed the Prime Minister of Canada after having advised Justin Trudeau for the last 5 years, because he's an economic genius, right? After having advised Justin Trudeau into doing to Canada what's been done to Canada, which was the reason that Justin Trudeau was so incredibly unpopular in the country. So after being a big part of what made Justin Trudeau so unpopular, he just parachutes back in, and all of a sudden, whoa, he's the prime minister. Canada doesn't seem fair. Nobody's ever voted for the guy outside of the very, very sketchy liberal leadership race. I mean, there has been in 1984, Turner was not a member of parliament when he became prime minister, when he succeeded, essentially replaced Pierre Elliott Trudeau. But he at least had been an MP before. He was elected in 1976. Carney, nothing. He just shows up out of nowhere and just he's just anointed. The media sees, hey, this guy's our meal ticket. We like him. And we just hate conservatives anyway. We hate Pierre anyway. And then we're just stuck with this. And then, and now we have an election, though. Now we have an election. He called it pretty quickly. And that's the only thing that made sense, because he would know, nobody would know better than him, that his policies, the things he's going to inflict on Canada, are not going to make Canadians' lives better. Nobody knows that better than him. And he accepts that. He accepts that. Take a look at his book. He accepts that. So the longer it goes, the worse it is for him. So you got to strike while the iron's hot, and while people are still don't really know who he is. And I'm telling you right now, half the country still doesn't know who this guy is. Right? Most people aren't even paying attention to politics. But here he is. So I wanted to show you an article from Lori Goldstein here. And this kind of goes over, and this kind of describes Carney's strategy of tricking the Canadian people into electing him in an election. Carney's theft of Poilievre's platform has turned into a farce. It is a farce. The Liberals' economic record, while in power, indicates they don't believe in what they're promising and will abandon most, if not all of it, if reelected. Don't forget, Carney has been advising Trudeau on everything, on the Liberals' policies, since at least 2020. I'm guessing it would actually, maybe in a more informal way before that, but probably no less of an influential way. I mean, just look at this guy. He should be like hanging from the side of a cathedral. He's a gargoyle. He's a globalist gargoyle. If Mark Carney and the Liberals are best equipped to take on U.S. President Donald Trump in a tariff war, why have they stolen their election platform from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservatives? It's because they think the public is stupid. That's why. This ongoing theft has reached farcical levels, given that the Liberals' economic record of their last 10 years in power, as well as Carney's own statements before entering politics, indicate they don't believe in what they're promising and will abandon most, if not all, if reelected. They've done it before. Just more lying. Liberal Prime Minister Pierre Trudeau, Justin Trudeau's father, mocked Conservative leader Bob Stanfield in the 1974 election for proposing wage and price controls to break the momentum of inflation with the phrase, "Zamp, you're frozen," before bringing in wage and price controls in 1975 after he won. Then Liberal leader Jean Chrétien promised in the 1993 election to get rid of the GST and replace it with something else. Something else. Chrétien was PM for a decade, and we're still waiting. Just politics. Then Liberal Environment Minister Catherine McKenna assured Canadians before the 2019 election that Trudeau's carbon tax wouldn't go above $50 per ton of industrial greenhouse gas when it reached that level in 2022. After winning that election, Trudeau boosted it to $170 per ton in 2030. The latest example of the Carney Liberals' pilfering of the promises of the Poilievre Conservatives occurred late last week when Carney announced his government would cut the GST for first-time home buyers of new or substantial. When Carney announced his government would cut the GST for first-time home buyers of new or substantially renovated homes valued at under $1 million, savings up to $50,000. Poilievre promised that in October 2024, pledging you will pay no GST on new homes under $1 million, saving up to $50,000. Of course, we've also got, does it mention it in here? Oh, yes. He says he's going to scrap Trudeau's consumer carbon tax, another position he stole from Poilievre, but keep Trudeau's industrial carbon tax, which will raise consumer prices instead of the taxes on the... But my brain... Let me read this whole thing again. Claiming he will claiming he will scrap Trudeau's consumer carbon tax, another position he stole from Poilievre, but keep Trudeau's industrial carbon tax, which will raise consumer prices instead of the taxes on the... So now Poilievre wants to get rid of the consumer. Carney promises the... Now, Poilievre wants to get rid of the industrial taxes as well. Carney promises the Liberals won't go ahead with increases to the capital gains tax they announced in their April 2024 budget. Increases Poilievre opposed from the start. Yeah, so they're just stealing. They're trying to trick. They're trying to trick Canadians. Is it working? It's working to some extent. But what I don't buy is, and let's grab Mark Carney here. Let's grab Mark Carney here. Hold on. Well, that's Carney lies, but here, I want to find something. I just want to find the right image to put here. Actually, this is a good one. This is a good one. So this was, this tweet here is from this guy in the black hard hat. And he's saying, I'm the guy in the black hard hat. I didn't want to be there. I vowed not to shake his hand. I told the organizers that I wouldn't. Apparently, he's gained like tens of thousands of followers, by the way, since this. But Carney, he's stealing conservative policy in a very cynical way. This is all exactly the opposite of what he advised Trudeau on, what he'd been advising Trudeau on for years now, right? The stuff that, like the consumer carbon tax. Do you remember Mark Holland in Parliament talking about how telling Canadian children that if they went on a road trip with their parents, that the world was going to burn. That was going to end the world, end civilization, right? Apparently, I mean, we had to have this or else the world was going to be destroyed. It's going to be an apocalypse maybe tomorrow. Who knows? The increase in the capital gains tax. I mean, that was only greedy billionaires or something would not want. All of a sudden, it's great. It also shows you here that there's no principles involved, right? No, the modern left now, there's no principles, right? They will go from something. If you supported, if you were not in support of the capital gains hike, you were a fascist. Now, immediately, Carney's doing it. Great, wonderful, everything's perfect. Wow, he's awesome. He understands economics, right? The consumer carbon tax. If you're against that, fascist. You want the world to end. You're a conspiracy theorist. Blah 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 blah. Carney does it. Wonderful. Great. This is the perfect thing. What a great guy he is. There's no principles whatsoever involved here. They don't care. It's just whatever the teleprompter tells them. Whatever is read to them off a teleprompter on TV, that's the thing now, right? As long as it feels progressive, as long as they get permission from the leftists on the cable news, on the TV news, or from the Toronto Star, as long as they get permission, that's all they're ever doing, actually, just waiting to see what's acceptable, just waiting to be told what's the next thing they're supposed to support. No principles whatsoever. It's just, does it feel left? Does it feel like what we're supposed to believe? Oh, then we do. Then it's perfect. Then it's great. Doesn't matter what happened 5 seconds ago. Now we're for this. And we always have been. And anybody who disagrees with us is now the fascist, even though we're on the exact opposite side. It's just amazing, right? It's just amazing. They can support the thing. Today, they can support the thing that they called somebody fascist for supporting yesterday, and just no big deal. It just seems like zombie-like behavior, doesn't it? So anyway, Carney's stealing conservative policy. Which is basically just reversing the, unpopular liberal policy on which Carney himself advised the Trudeau Liberals. By the way, all the things he's reversing, it seems pretty obvious that these were Carney's ideas, that Trudeau was leaning on Carney, right? Chrystia Freeland was the finance minister, but her previous experience was she was a journalist. Obviously, he was listening to Mark Carney. That's who his inspiration was. That's who his mentor was. So now he's reversing the things that he told Trudeau to do and being called a hero for it. But here's the thing. Make no mistake, Carney can temporarily pause the consumer carbon tax, and I believe that's all that it is. But his life work is net zero, right? He's carbon obsessed. He has been forever. That's not going away. So all that's happening here is a bait and switch. A bait and switch. And these guys know it. These guys who didn't want to shake his hand. Here's his book. So this is just the preface, right? This is just the introduction. And he didn't write this 20 years ago. He wrote this a few years ago. You think he's changed his mind on all of this? I want to show you something. I wrote values because I believed even before COVID struck that we needed radical changes to build a better world for all. But I thought, what about Canada? Do you think he still is worried about the world, or is he worried about Canada? That's the thing with the globalists, right? They're not really into nations, right? They're not really into even patriotism. Aside from all this elbows up, Team Canada bullshit, he doesn't believe any of that. He's barely lived in Canada in his adult life. We need radical changes to build a better world for all. Well, you know, with this election, I kind of feel like we're mostly just pretty much interested in Canada, right? We kind of just want to worry about Canada, really. Let's see. Canada pledges $100 million for Palestinians in Gaza. He's already prime minister at this point. He's already a prime minister at that point. See, this is being concerned about the world, not Canada. Here, he was already the leader of the Liberal Party. You think they didn't put this stuff past him? $3.8 million for a mountain warfare ski school maintenance building in Lebanon. Really? Does it really cost $3.8 million for a maintenance building in Lebanon? I don't know. And by the way, Lebanese Armed Forces mountain warfare ski school is none of Canada's business. Here, $84 million in humanitarian aid, which this is also with Mark Carney as the leader of the Liberal Party. $84 million in humanitarian aid to Syria. Mark Carney's already the leader of the Liberal Party by now. $84 billion in humanitarian aid to Syria. Is he aware that Syria is run by jihadis? It should say $84 million in jihadi money. Just jihadi aid. It should just say that. So when he's talking about, I mean, none of that's going to change. All the crazy spending, the global affairs kind of stuff, none of that's going to change. Again, he's most concerned with building a better world for all. I'd really prefer he just focused on Canadians. I'm also not wild about this radical changes. So radical changes means radical left changes. Have we had enough of the radical left in Canada yet? Have we had enough of that? Let's see. The scale of the investment is enormous. So to get Canada to Mark Carney's Glasgow Financial Summit net zero stuff. In fact, let's just read this. The countries at the Glasgow Summit finally recognize this reality, increasing the proportion of global emissions covered by the net zero commitments from less than 1/3 to almost 90%. Net zero is now the organizing principle for the world's largest companies and the core of the financial system. It should soon be the norm across economies. This will drive investment needed for transition to a sustainable future. So, by the way, this is his whole global banking alliance thing, what he's doing with Brookfield, where he ran the ESG, Environmental Social Governance department. I wonder if he has any personal interest in money going to green shit, net zero stuff, net zero companies, green boondoggles, let's just call them. I wonder. Obviously, he does. The scale of the investment is enormous. An estimated $2 trillion of new capital spending in Canada alone. $2 trillion. Really? Really? Like the whole national debt is $1.5 trillion right now, and we can't afford that. I don't think this is his plan, by the way. When he says competitive Canadian companies will be more competitive, It's not that their taxes are going to be lower. He's already told us he's going to increase their taxes. He's going to add onerous carbon taxes onto them. So it's not that it's going to be more affordable. That it's going to be easier for them to operate. No, there's going to be there's going to be all of this investment that he's going to demand. $2 trillion worth of new capital spending in Canada alone. That means regulations. That means industry being forced to do things that aren't being done in other countries, which will make them less competitive or just go out of business or leave the country, obviously. Let's see. Move quickly to a zero carbon electricity grid and electrify as much of our transportation and industrial processes as possible. Not going to happen. Accelerate our production and adoption of electric vehicles. It's Canada. It's Canada, right? Governments need to set the terms for and incentivize private investment in the net zero transition. This is all sounding very central planning stuff. This is not free market stuff. This is not stuff that's going to make companies more competitive. Credible and predictable government climate policies encourage investors to pour in money in anticipation of this transition. Really? Really? Because it hasn't, Trudeau's been doing all the stuff you wanted, and we haven't seen money pour into Canada. We've seen the opposite, $500 billion go down south. Virtuous circle of large-scale investment. This is all fantasy, right? Faster decarbonization, more jobs, and faster growth. So for him, this is great because companies that he's got interest in, I mean, with Brookfield, yes, he stepped down from Brookfield to run for prime minister, but he still has interest in Brookfield. He can still make money from Brookfield. We're not sure exactly how much. Or maybe he's completely out, but we don't know because he won't tell anybody. But either way, do you think he's not going back? Do you think he might not have that in mind? Hey, I'm going back into that world, that investment world again. Maybe some of the stuff I do now might affect that and, might be good for me, right? Effective public policies include carbon prices such as Canada's legislated path to $170 per ton in 2030, with the proceeds rebated to Canadians. That's not going to happen. And our commitments to clean grid and clean cars by 2035. That's right. They want to get rid of the internal combustion engine by 2035. He didn't write this 20 years ago. He wrote this a few years ago. Let's see. One reason why a new group that I chair, the Glasgow Financial Alliance for Net Zero, was formed. It's comprised of the world's largest banks, insurers, pension funds, and asset managers. Well, 4 of Canada's biggest banks leave Mark Carney-led climate initiative. It's fallen apart. It's falling apart. So he's running now for prime minister. He's prime minister, but he's running an election to stay prime minister as this economic genius who's this, going to lead us into the future. His own crowning achievement, his net zero achievement had already fallen apart before he started running. It'd be nice if maybe the CBC Power Politics panel maybe mention some of this stuff. His crowning achievement had fallen apart before he even announced he was going to be prime minister. Maybe that's what this is about. Maybe he's seen his life work, his crowning achievement fall to pieces, and it's humiliating for him. And he wants to now use Canada to try and get that back again. Use Canada as his little net zero laboratory. Not so little net zero laboratory. So, Carney has stolen a lot of Poilievre's platform, some important parts of Poilievre's platform, to try and trick Canadians into thinking he's this centrist. He is not. He hasn't changed in just a few years since he published that book. He hasn't changed. He's cynical. He's a globalist. He is a self-proclaimed elitist globalist. In fact, I have to show you the clip. Actually, hold on one sec. Easier just for me to search it up than go through the bookmark because it takes forever. All right. Here we go. Here we go. This is what he says himself. It's not me saying it. This is him. This is the globalist hobgoblin himself.
My strength is I know how the world works. I know how to get things done. I'm connected. I can deliver for the country. My weakness is, people will charge me as being elitist or a globalist, to use that term, which is, that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need. My weakness.
He hasn't changed. He hasn't become a centrist. No, he's the same radical leftist, eco fanatic that he's always been. He's just lying. He's cynical. This is what the modern left does. They just lie because they have no real principles, don't really care. Mark Carney, although, you know what? Mark Carney does have, he is actually, I suppose you can say he has principles. He does want to destroy Canada. That's important to him, right? He's sticking with that. He's willing to lie to Canadians to get that done. Or, maybe more precisely, we should say he's willing to use Canada as his net zero laboratory, as his net zero sandbox. And he doesn't give a shit what happens to Canadians, but he's willing to pretend that he does. So they'll give them the opportunity to really, really wreck their lives. If they thought it was bad under Trudeau, just wait. All right. So we've got a long way to go on Carney. Let's get back to the chat for a second. Then we'll get back into it. In fact, we'll put on a palate cleanser because I find Carney just so unpleasant. All right. I skip back a little bit. Nevada says stinking commies. That's a great point. As of them says Carney is plagiarizing. Yep. By the way, it's all just a scam. He doesn't mean he hasn't changed his lifelong philosophy overnight. He's not suddenly this responsible centrist. Let's see. Nevada says, big time chemtrails here again today. Rosie says, chemtrails are maddening. It's one of those things that I just haven't looked into. There are certain, there's so much news. There's a lot of things. There's, the Amy Ham trial or Amy Ham case in Canada, who was this nurse who was being basically railroaded by the nurses union in British Columbia for basically just saying, men can't be women, essentially. That was a trial. I wanted, not a trial. It was I don't know, like an internal case, basically like an internal kind of case within that institution. But, that's what I wanted to cover. But other people were covering it, and I can't cover everything. And I want to know what I'm talking about if I'm going to cover something. Chemtrails is one of those. I keep thinking to look into it. I never do. My first thoughts on that were like, oh, that's just nothing. That's just planes. That's just, that's just comes out of the jets, right? But I know people have talked about a lot more, so I'm thinking now maybe I should look into that. But there's some things I just never get to. But I will get to it eventually. As in them. So if Carney reverses all these policies and starts building all these houses and starts doing all these things that Pierre wants to do, if Pierre wins, he'll have nothing to do when he gets in. Here's the thing, though. He's not going to do that, right? There's a big difference between, okay, so he's stolen a few things. to give him this superficially make him appear, or to make him appear superficially to be centrist, right? But if you look just behind it, so you look at the carbon tax, the consumer carbon tax that you pay at the pump, right? Okay, so it's that act is actually still in place. He's just reducing it to zero for now. He can always put it back up again later, right? But he's increasing the industrial carbon tax, right? As well as he's going to put all kinds of new regulations on. He also wants to have a carbon tax for importing from government, for importing products from countries that don't have carbon pricing, which is just a tax on Canadians. It's totally insane and stupid. This is part of a climate plan, which theoretically is supposed to happen in Europe. He loves the EU, by the way. He loves the EU, right? He loves the EU a lot more than he likes the States. So behind it, it's just going to be a disaster for Canadian businesses and industry, right? It's going to be a nightmare for them. In fact, what it will do is it will just drive them south into the waiting, loving arms of Donald Trump, who's told anybody who will listen, come to the United States, bring your company, bring your headquarters, bring your manufacturing to the United States, low taxes. We're going to cut all the red tape. You're not going to have to worry about too much regulation. We're just going to bring in. You're going to have a great time here. We're going to repopulate that hollowed out industrial base of the United States. That's all that it will do. If you look at the capital gains tax, right, he's going to end up raising that. Of course he is, because he says he's going to continue to run deficits. Now, what he says is that he's going to cut it into two. So he's going to take the operational budget and then the investment budget and split them into two. And the operational budget will be balanced, but not the investment one. But that's not really, well, it's all just spending. No other country does this. It's just another cynical scam. He's going to keep running deficits. He's telling us that. He's going to need money, especially when the Canadian business and industry starts to collapse. Well, continues to collapse, because nothing else can happen with what he says concretely that he's actually going to do. So his platform is not actually conservative or moderate in any way. It's going to be extremely harmful. But on the face, it's to trick people who don't pay attention. Let's see. Rosie says, anyone who declares their own humility lacks character and should not be trusted. Yep. Let's see. Let's see. Oh, and by the way, the housing, that was the other question there too. Yeah, he loves mass immigration. That's going to continue apace. So don't expect housing prices to go down. Just supply and demand, people. All right, I'm going to skip down to the end here so we can keep going. Spambot says, I will be filled with joy if Marks Carney does not win his riding. I know. We're going to get into that too, actually, because another just dirty move. Dirty move. He might not. I mean, all right, so let's go to the polls. So 338 right now has the Liberals at 39, the Conservatives at 37. So before we get even into this at all, we went over this last stream, but I want to go over it again. I want to show you, this is from 1984. So here we had when Pierre Elliott Trudeau, so in 84, Pierre Elliott Trudeau was the leader of the Liberal Party. He was very unpopular. He took his famous walk in the snow and then was replaced with John Turner. So you can see here the numbers for Trudeau were very low. And this is back when there was less parties too. 23 here in this one poll, 30, 27. Not looking good. The Conservatives were up, look, over 60 in that one, 56, 48. So Trudeau resigns. John Turner becomes the prime minister, just like Mark Carney did. All of a sudden, PCs. They were the progressive conservatives in those days. 49 for the Liberals, 39, 48, 39, 49, 39. It's like, oh, looks like John Turner's going to win in a landslide, right? John Turner's going to is going to win the next election. Well, it turned out 50% for the Conservatives, 28% for the Liberals. And on the other side of it, you had in 93, where the Conservatives were very unpopular. Kim Campbell takes over the party, and all of a sudden actually is ahead briefly, and crashes down again, just like in 84. And the Liberals won a big landslide in that. So this is, do I have zero concern? No. I do have a little bit of concern. I didn't before. I have a tiny bit. Not that much. I'm still pretty confident in a conservative majority government. 338 federal projection is an aggregate. So in Canada, there are a lot less polls than there are in the United States. In the United States, those aggregates are dealing with like dozens of different polls. There's just a handful in Canada. And we seem to be what looks to be very much like a kind of Kamala Carney effect. Kamala Carney, let's call him Kamala Carney. A Kamala Carney effect. You've got the ECOS polls, you've got these Liaison, which is now behind the scenes. We're seeing a lot of Chinese connection to it, as we know that the Chinese Communist Party, China has been interfering in Canadian elections since at least 2019. And obviously it's going to be a lot further back then. And of course, they like the Liberals. So you're seeing some weird kind of polling happening here. It makes me think a bit of Kamala. So one poll, because there are fewer polls in Canada, one or two could make a big difference. Certainly a few could make a huge difference, right? 39, 37. Let's go to this one here. So this is Poilievre. And in this one, you can actually take out some of the polls. So they have the Conservatives at 37, the Liberals at 37.3 or 37.4 here, actually. They've got the NDP at 11.8, the Bloc at 6.4. So let's not even mess with this yet. Let's just take a look, right? So NDP 11.8. NDP is not going to end up with 11 or 12%. They're going to end up with more like 14 or 15%. I want to show you something here. Hold on. Here it is. So the NDP has to go after Carney and the Liberals because they're not going to get any Conservatives. Right? So the Liberals and the NDP, they cannibalize each other. They get no Conservative votes whatsoever. He's in trouble. His leadership is in trouble. So he's got to save himself. And the way to do that is he's got to focus on Mark Carney. I mean, he's going to attack Pierre Poilievre as well, and the Conservatives as well, obviously. But he knows that he's got to claw some of those people back from the Liberals, because when you look at this poll and you see them rising, a lot of this is, in fact, most of this is NDP voters, right? Or, Liberal voters who had become kind of indifferent and kind of hopeless, who've been reinvigorated, right? Or I say reinvigorated, but let's see on election day. Anyway, let's hear Jagmeet Singh here.
Mr. Singh, I'll just follow up here. You had a lot to say about Mark Carney and a lot about what he's done to cash in on this crisis, you said. What evidence do you have that Mark Carney has done anything unethical to take advantage of this crisis?
Well, the fact that he headed up Brookfield, and Brookfield is a large corporate landlord in Canada that engaged in rent eviction. At a time when Canadians could not find affordable homes, he saw a way to make more profit for his company. And now I don't fault him for making profit for his company. I fault him for proposing that somehow the person that fed the housing crisis, that rent evicted people, that jacked up the price of homes that were affordable, that bought up affordable homes, then turned them into unaffordable places, that somehow that guy could be trusted to fix the housing crisis. He cannot be trusted. What he's going to do is what he's done his entire career, which is make more money for the super rich. And it's going to hurt you and your family. That's what people need to know. And I'm going to point that out every time I get.
That's boilerplate kind of socialist stuff. But that's going to work. I mean, over the course of a campaign, right? It's a short campaign in Canada. April 28th is going to be the election day. But, you know, even over that time, that's going to work. That's going to start to claw people back in from the NDPers that went over to the Liberals. That's going to start to claw them back in again, especially with Mark Carney, you know, positioning himself as kind of a moderate centrist. Right? Well, they don't want that, right? People who've ever voted NDP don't want that, right? So they're not going to end up, NDP's not going to end up at 11.8. They're going to take at least a few points from there. I also think, too, that enthusiasm is going to matter in this election, right? Like, how enthusiastic are Canadians really to vote for, let's see, to vote for this?
I'm asking for a strong, positive mandate from my fellow Canadians. I've just requested that the Governor-General dissolve Parliament and call an election for April 28th. She has agreed. We are facing the most significant crisis of our lifetimes because of President Trump's unjustified trade actions and his threats to our sovereignty. Our response must be to build a strong economy and a more secure Canada. President Trump claims that Canada isn't a real country. He wants to break us so America can own us. I'm asking for a strong...
That's not going to, aside from the fact it's hard to stay awake, that's not going to last through to election day, right? That's not going to last. Just blaming everything on Trump is not going to work, right? People are already starting to forget about all of this, right? You know, the people with the Team Canada, you know, the Team Canada elbows up. I mean, they go home and they watch their American TV shows. They probably watch CNN, right? They're planning vacations to, you know, Palm Springs or Florida or LA, wherever, or New York, right? This is not going to last. It's not enough, right? It's too shallow. All right, so this is the Chandra Arya stuff. We'll get to that in a minute. Look at this. Check this out. Okay, here he commands his minions here, the peasants, to cheer for him. This guy, well, let's watch from the beginning. See that? Nothing from them. They don't like him, right? This guy here tweeted about it, said they were forced to be there. He refused to shake his hand. And then an awkward moment.
All right, heads up.
They hate him.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this announcement.
Yeah, let's see. How about this?
CBC News. You appeared to suggest yesterday that you're open to moving away from the federal government's emissions cap, while your environment minister said that the cap will remain in place. Can you explain what your approach will be to the emissions cap, and specifically how it will be determined and what will inform your decision?
Well, there's two things, or several things here. First,
Yeah, the lying isn't going to help them.
I'm a pragmatist, so I'm focused on, as the government is, on getting emissions down from the production and transportation of conventional.
Hold on, wait a second. Now, I heard somebody say he's kind of like the Canadian Mr. Burns. What do you see there?
Getting emissions down from the production and transportation of conventional oil and gas. Okay, that's good for the environment. It ultimately will be good for the competitiveness of those producers and the distribution of that. So that's the objective, is to get down. Now, there is a role for an emissions cap, and again, emissions cap, not a production cap, but an emissions cap. I know you didn't say it, but just to be clear, because some twist it. There is a role for an emissions cap within that. But what's required in order to get those emissions down, the emissions intensity down of the production that we can see growing, particularly if Canadian oil and gas is displacing American oil and gas that we're importing right now in Eastern Canada.
Mr. Burns. Thing is, his lies are boring. That's the problem. His lies are boring. His attempts to cynically manipulate are boring, right? Look, Prime Minister Hair and Teeth could get those suburban, he could get those wine mums in Toronto excited to go out and stand in line to vote. He could get the cat ladies, the metropolitan cat ladies, to get excited to go and stand in line to vote for him. He might date them one day. They don't care if Mark Carney dates them or not. There's going to be a massive enthusiasm gap between the Canadian Mr. Burns here and Pierre Poilievre, because the Conservative voters are excited to vote for Poilievre. They're all going to go out and they're going to wait as long as they have to in line to vote for the Conservative Party. There's not going to be that kind of enthusiasm for Mark Carney. They're just not. For this guy, no. I mean, again, even his lies are so tedious and boring. So, where do they end up? Well, talking about the polling, let's just take out two. So, Ecos is obviously fake polls. The guy who runs it, who owns Ecos, said that he was going to do everything in his power to prevent Pierre Poilievre from ever being prime minister. Liaison, which has been now exposed to have major Chinese connections. They're putting out polls every single day. It all looks very weird. Just those two. Nanos is, it's liberal polling, but we'll leave that in there. So we just get rid of those two. All of a sudden, the Conservatives are ahead. Not by much, but all of a sudden, just those two switches the Conservatives to be in the lead. Right? NDP is going to pick up 3-4 points. That's going to come from the Liberals, in my opinion. You can probably put the Liberals down to 32, 33 there. I think that enthusiasm is going to matter. And I think that as people get to know Mark Carney, as people get to know, where is he? Get to know the Canadian Mr. Burns, this guy. In fact, let's get another picture of him. Hold on, there's a good one here. Let's see. Here we go. How about this? Mr. Burns playing hockey. Good Lord. As Canadians get to know this guy, right? They're not going to be excited. They're not going to be enthusiastic. It's not going to be who is going to really be excited to go and stand outside on April 28th for 2 hours to vote for this guy. Those NDPers that they got are not going to be. I can tell you that much. Here's another NDP ad here. NDP. Mark Carney is in it for billionaires, not working people. Mark Carney's first promise is to cut taxes for billionaires, not working people. See, that's going to be effective with the NDP crowd. It's not like, it's not half the public or anything, but it's enough. the other thing that's going to be a problem for him, as he actually faces scrutiny now, right? So Mark Carney just walked in. He just parachuted in. The red carpet was rolled out for him. The media was, just waiting for him to cradle him in their loving arms, right? He had Trudeau's people behind him to smooth everything through, right? The leadership race was a joke. It's clearly there was some sort of agreement beforehand to just not lay any hands on him, not go after him, just not touch him. It was just a charade, obviously. Now it gets serious. Now it gets really serious. We're even starting to see some tough questions coming from the media now, which is amazing. So, and keep in mind, even when he was prime minister, most people still didn't know who he was. Even when he became prime minister, that was really the first time a lot of people were actually hearing about him, because that's just Canada. But he has left this paper trail, this video trail, 1,000 miles long of what he really is, who he really is. And that is going to flood the airwaves. That is going to flood the internet now. That's going to have an effect.
And I would say as well, our economy is stronger than the American economy in the medium term. I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. So our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats.
He just never stops lying, right? Hold on. Where do we go? Mark Carney is a liar, says Andrew Scheer. Says he had no role in moving his former company's headquarters out of Canada to the United States. We know that 100% that he did. Says he helped Paul Martin balance the budget. We know that's impossible, just simply didn't happen. These are all things that are so easy to check as well. Carney says he resigned all his roles to run for Liberal leader. We know that that was also false. Also just a weird lie, right? Just a lazy lie. He didn't even need to tell the lie. It was just, it's kind of minor, but yet he still does. The helping Paul Martin balance the budget thing, utterly ridiculous. I mean, why lie about that? Like, we can check it. We can find out you're lying. I think it shows a contempt for the Canadian people that he can just tell them anything. I mean, he is a self-proclaimed elitist globalist, right? Globalists are imperious, right? Carney's tone is imperious and smug, right? It's not because he doesn't think that he's above the common man. It's because he thinks he's above the common man, because he's better. His opinions are better. He knows what's best for you. What he wants is more important than what you want. And I think that's really the kind of really salient point here. What he wants is more important than what you want. And that is absolutely going to come out. Again, he hasn't been tested. And even the few times that he has been tested, it hasn't gone well for him. He's not prepared. He doesn't know what to do. He's used to going in. He's a central banker. He's used to going in and be feted by people, going into meeting rooms and going in for meetings, and everybody's so impressed and complimentary to him. No pushback, obviously. I think he's going to make some major mistakes. I mean, they'll obviously try and keep him out of the public eye as much. Yeah, Kamala Carney, right? They know he's not good in front of a microphone. They're going to try and minimize that. But there's only so much. And there's a danger in doing that as well, because Pierre Poilievre is quite good in front of a microphone. And you really want to cede that to him. I mean, look, it worked for the Democrats in 2020 with Biden. But that was kind of a special circumstance. It didn't work with Kamala in 2024. Let's see. Mark Carney, I have just asked the Governor General to dissolve Parliament and call a federal election on April 28th. We need to build the strongest economy in the G7. We need to deal with President Trump's tariffs. Canadians deserve a choice about who should lead that effort for our country. Well, yes, that's the election. Obviously, that's the choice, right? Strongest economy in the G7. Let's see. We ended up being the weakest one under your advice, with you advising Justin Trudeau. Obviously, former journalist Chrystia Freeland wasn't making any decisions. Okay. Hold on. Just want to do something quickly here. All right. Jasmine Lane. Mark Carney confirms he will not meet with Trump ahead of the election until Trump recognizes Canada is a sovereign country. He has to say it. He has to say it before he meets with him. When asked, so you won't speak to him, Carney says, no meetings, no meetings. We can always talk, and then abruptly ended the questions and walked back inside. See, that's not responsible leadership. Obviously, that's politics, right? That's cynical. That's cynical politics. But he's counting on that working for him. I don't think that it will. And I think that obviously that is an awful thing for for the prime minister to say. I mean, is it a big deal or not? Is this an existential threat to Canada or not? Of course it's not, but that's what they're playing up. It shows you just how much they don't actually mean it. Now here from Andy Lee, Mark Carney explains why Chandra Arya was disqualified and his nomination for the Liberal Party was revoked, and how he came to be the candidate in Nepean, sort of. So Mark Carney is not an MP. Nobody's ever voted for him, right? If Parliament was actually functioning as it would in a normal country, he wouldn't have a seat. So he needs to run. He needs to run to become an MP, to be, to properly be the prime minister. So which seat did he choose? Well, let's see. Here we go. Liberals revoke Chandra Arya's nomination after removing him from leadership race. National campaign director informed him in a letter, but provided no reason. So during the Liberal leadership race, as part of the kind of just greasing the skids for Mark Carney, they kicked out two Liberals, right? That they didn't want in the leadership. They didn't want them on the debate stage. One was this guy and one was Ruby Dalla. And the reason they kicked them out is because they were going to challenge Mark Carney. So they were going to actually maybe push him in a debate, ask him some hard questions, challenge him on some stuff. That's why, obviously, that's not allowed, right? That's not allowed to Liberal leadership debate. They've already decided, right? That would just complicate things. So now, I guess, as partially, at least partially as punishment for this, they've just kicked him out of the party entirely now. He's not allowed to run. In Canada, like you can't just run. You've got to be approved. And this is all the parties. Got to be approved by the party, which I think is bullshit. And I think that's something that should change. But they've just decided, no, we don't want you anymore. He's been an MP there for 10 years. He's been an MP there for 10 years. And they've just decided, nope, you're gone now. We're taking any funds you've raised. Those are ours now. And the emperor is taking your spot. So, and this is seen as a safe spot. That's why. But, not that long ago, only a few months ago, actually, that one was, absolutely not certain, that seat. I believe the Conservatives were ahead. So if these polls are kind of an illusion right now, which I think that they are to at least some extent, this could be a big mistake for Carney, a very arrogant mistake. Because he might run it. Will he run as an independent? If he does, that complicates things. Then you're splitting the vote. But again, this is the slimy sleaziness that you come to expect from the Liberal Party now, and from a sneaky snake like Mark Carney. So let's hear Mark Carney explain just what happened here, why Chandra Arya was disqualified. This is from Andy Lee.
Be disqualified from running in this race, and you live in this riding.
So several things there in your question. First, the decision of candidates selection or candidate approval. We have within the Liberal Party a committee called the Greenlight Committee which takes into account various information about candidates, does basic candidate due diligence, if I can put it that way. Mr. Arya, so I'm not a member of that committee. They take their decisions. Mr. Arya, as you know, was disqualified from the leadership race for the Liberal Party because of certain.
Even if he was making sense, like you still wouldn't care because he's so boring and uncharismatic. I mean, he is just awful at explaining anything. He is not articulate or interesting at all. But anyway, let's continue.
Factors that informed the decision. It's my understanding of the Green Light Committee to recommend that he be disqualified as a candidate in Nepean. Now, from my perspective, I've been a resident in the Ottawa area for almost 20 years, with the exception, of course, when I was quite obviously a resident in London when I was governor of the Bank of England. But apart from the time when I was governor there, I've been resident in Ottawa. I know Nepean well. I was best man to Peter Chiarelli, who grew up in Nepean. So from Barhaven to Bell's Corners and in between, it's an area I know well. And in many respects, it's representative of many of the aspects, not all the aspects, but many of the aspects of this country. Median incomes around probably $50,000-$55,000, so a little less than the national average, but in there. Very diverse.
Okay, so nothing. So just nothing. I'm just going to go ahead and assume that Chandra Arya pissed off the Liberal Party Star Chamber, and that he's now seen as kind of, their treatment of him is seen as an embarrassment and probably bad for the campaign. So they're just going to completely get rid of him after he's been in that seat for 10 years. And it's seen as a safe seat for Mark Carney to just slide into. It kills two birds with one stone there. Feel cynical at all? Does that feel cynical at all to you? Does it? Does it feel like these are people who have the best interest of the country at heart? Does it feel like he does? Mark Carney does? Or does it feel like Mark Carney's out for Mark Carney? And he always has been. Kind of feels a bit like that to me. Tristan Hopper said, I've never felt, and he's a Canadian journalist, he's quite good. I've never felt more banana republic than I do right now. A longtime expat flies back, immediately becomes prime minister, and begins trying to woo the electorate using crude and outdated national stereotypes. Rupa Subramania said, I think the term you're looking for is carpetbagger. Steve Deason wrote, Mike Myers good, Wayne Gretzky bad. That's right, Wayne Gretzky's bad now. No longer a national hero anymore because he shook hands with Trump. Americano bad. Canadacano good. I might die if this level of cringe continues. It's all fake too. All of this, Team Canada patriotism is fake. Right? These are all people who, if you 2 seconds ago, if you told them, in fact, you can tell them right now, if you say, so Canada is like a infinite genocide state forever, and everybody's evil and racist, and it's a terrible place, and colonizer, settler, colonizer, land acknowledgement, blah, 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 blah. They'll all nod along happily, right? They'll all, clap like trained seals. It's all bullshit. It's all bullshit. Barbara Kay says, exactly, the hockey ad with Mike Myers, gag me with a spoon, and yet it's working. All my lady friends are gushing over it. They're not going to show up to vote for Mark Carney. Right? They showed up to vote for Prime Minister Hair and Teeth. I'm not saying all of them aren't going to. I'm saying there's going to be an enthusiasm gap with conservatives who've been waiting for this moment for years. I'm saying this from personal experience, years. And then liberals who are like, well, I'm probably not going to vote. And, that's why they were so far down in the polls, because there's just no liberal enthusiasm whatsoever, who now have seen, Canadian Mr. Burns the globalist hobgoblin, Mark Carney, who the media's told them is really great and spiffy and wonderful and responsible. And now there's some hope. Right now there's some hope. But are they really going to be excited? I mean, hair and teeth, people. I mean, hold on. Where is he? I mean, this this inspiring figure. Is that really going to get people out to the polls so excited to vote for this? Hold on. It's way back here somewhere. But we have to show it. Oh. Stuff just seems to go missing from these bookmarks sometimes. Let's see. Where are we? Hold on. Stick with me. Don't go away. Don't run. I don't know. Shit just goes missing from this. All right, hold on. It's probably up here somewhere, actually. All right. This. I said hobgoblin. I said globalist technocrat hobgoblin. And this is what I meant. Look, this guy here, he's pointing at him. He's pointing at him and laughing. He's saying, no way. That guy's not going to win. Look at that guy. He's a gargoyle. This is not going to get people excited to go out in the sufficient numbers, right? I think that there is this kind of fake enthusiasm right now that is affecting some of the polling. That's what I think. I don't think people are going to be really excited about this guy. He can't talk. He can't do anything, and he lies constantly. There's enough material to make 1,000 documentaries on how this guy is obsessed with net zero climate and how that's the most important thing to him. And he will absolutely destroy Canada to achieve his goal. What did Peterson say here? February 6th. Should we take a quick peek here? Let's take a quick peek here.
Of the currently wretched, but still dangerously powerful liberals, one Mark Carney is one of the world's prime advocates of the insane inanities of net zero. He is a man who has planned in writing, not least in his best-selling book, Values, the complete destruction of the fossil fuel industry. Bye-bye, Alberta, if that's not bad enough. And it is. He's also simultaneously an advocate of the same post-national view of Canada defined by Trudeau Jr. and his moralistic minions. What are we, according to such good thinkers? Nothing. But if anything, the oppressive, patriarchal, white, supremacist, identityless, colonial settler state defined by the progressive ideologues in the think tanks and elite dining rooms in Eastern Canada and the protest encampments on the campuses of Canadian universities. None of this fills the MAGA crowd with admiration, in case it needs to be said. None of it bodes well either for the economy of Canada. Doomed to replacement, according to Carney, by the hydrogen, solar, and wind power that either does not exist, that would be hydrogen, or that would doom Canadians to starve and freeze in the dark if it ever...
Yeah, he's not making this up. Hold on a second. Where is it? Here we go. Hold on. Let's talk about Alberta here. Most fundamentally, we can bring everyone along by creating the jobs of the present and future. Those are imaginary jobs, particularly in the regions of the country like my home province of Alberta. Jordan Peterson mentioned Alberta there. This is Mark Carney's book, by the way. This is Mark Carney's book. like my home province of Alberta, that will face the largest adjustment, he calls it, and could seize the greatest opportunity. Well, I don't know. How many cricket farms can you fit in Alberta? Exactly. I don't think that's really such an opportunity, though. And let's see. This is in the introduction to the book. I mean, you can go through it and through his book, and you can find sections where he talks fairly admiringly about Karl Marx, actually. That's what some people are calling him, Marx Carney. But he says it's so important to him to dismantle Alberta's energy industry that he brings it up in the introduction. Face the largest adjustment. Adjustment is a euphemism, by the way. He's using that as a euphemism. The largest collapse would be a more appropriate word.
Came to replace the reliable grid and transportation we also desperately depend on when it's 40 bloody below. We may, when arguing so...
Yeah, Mark Carney says adjustment. It'll be quite an adjustment when it's minus 40. And yeah, his net zero plans aren't working out so well.
Expensively and incompetently with the Americans, continue to congratulate ourselves on our comparative righteousness. That diet will become even thinner gruel, however, in a future characterized by their explosive economic growth and our rapid descent toward comparative poverty and irrelevance, green though that pathway may be argued, however falsely to be. Carney, to put it bluntly, is not a man like Justin Trudeau, a second-rater, under the mere influence of the World Economic Forum, that Malthusian fear-mongering cabal of authoritarian elitists, drunk on the fumes of their own self-righteous delusions. He is, by contrast, a veritable leader of that movement.
He is. He's the UN, leader of the UN global carbon or global net zero finance, whatever. Right? The UN, the same people the same people who put Saudi Arabia in charge of the Council on Women's Rights. That's who he pals around with. All right. I wanted to show you one more thing. To show you what he's really interested in. Thing is, he speaks in code. He speaks in globalist code, and that's what most people don't understand. When he's talking about opportunity for businesses, he doesn't mean what most people would think that he means. Right? Most people would think, cutting taxes, maybe cutting some regulation. That's what most people assume he would mean with competitiveness. No, what he means for him, competitiveness, hold on a second. For him, competitiveness is built out of this fantasy, this net zero climate alliance, his own climate alliance, banking climate alliance, which has collapsed, by the way. But what he means is this fantasy world where all the other countries in the world won't buy oil or gas or any products from countries that don't have carbon pricing. That's a fantasy. It's not real. He will say it, but it's not real. And I can prove that it's not real. Hold on. Where is he talking about this? I've got a clip of him talking about this. Hold on. Where is he? Look at this. Is that going to get out the cat moms in Vancouver and Toronto? Really? They'd get out for Trudeau. They'd go for Prime Minister Hair and Teeth. For this guy, I'm just not so sure. I'm not so sure that they're going to be that excited about him. They'll say they're going to vote for him, but will they actually go out and stand in line? I'm not certain. Okay, hold on. Where is it? We're almost there. There's so much I've collected on him. All right. Is it this one here? Let's take a look.
Carney, you said that you want to build energy infrastructure from the east to the west, or from the west.
Okay, it's not that one. He's lying in that one, by the way, but where is it? I need to get more organized, but I've only got so many hours in the day, people. I think we're almost there. Where is it? God damn it. I better be able to find it after all of this. I'm going to forget what my point was by the time we get there. Let's see. Where is it? Come on. Let's see. Is this it here? That's not it. I feel like it's just like putting up old stuff that we've already gone past back in front of me again. The hell is happening here? This is like Twilight Zone. No, God damn it. Where the hell is it? All right, hold on. Is this it? Let's try this.
CBC News, you appeared to suggest yesterday that you're open to moving away from the federal government's emissions cap, while your environment minister said that the cap will remain in place. Can you explain what your approach will be to the emissions cap, and specifically how it will be determined and what will inform your decision?
Well, there's two things, or there's several things here. First, I'm a pragmatist, so I'm focused on, as the government is, on getting emissions down from the production and transportation of conventional oil and gas. Okay, that's good for the environment. It ultimately will be good for the competitiveness of those producers and the distribution of that. So that's the objective, is to get down. Now, there is a role for an emissions cap, and again, emissions cap, not a production cap, but an emissions cap. I know you didn't.
Which effectively is going to be the same thing, but anyway.
Say it, but just to be clear, because some twist it. There is a role for an emission cap within that. But what's required in order to get those emissions down, the emissions intensity down of the production that we can see growing, particularly if Canadian oil and gas is displacing American oil and gas that we're importing right now in Eastern Canada.
All right, I fell asleep while I was watching that, but that's not the one I wanted to show you. And is this it here? Let's see.
Yes. Thank you very much, Mr. Prime Minister. You came on this first foreign trip making it clear that you needed public support for Canada as it faces not just...
Okay, we've already seen that one before. That's not the one I wanted to show you, though. Let's see. Hold on. I don't know. It's gone missing. Let me see if it's in, is it in here? Let's see. No, not in there. All right, we're going to have to move on from what I wanted to show you. So my point being, though, the point was that Mark Carney justifies all of his carbon pricing that he's going to inflict on Canadian industry by saying it will make Canadian companies more competitive because, the UK, the EU, they won't buy your oil and gas unless there's carbon prices on it. It didn't take much to kind of prove this wrong. Where is it? Here we go. This is from February 14th, 2025. U.S. LNG exports to Europe sets record. Not surprising, because leaders from Europe went to both Canada and the United States to ask for LNG, right? Trudeau said, no, we can't do that because whatever. He didn't think there was a financial case for it. I guess Carney told him not to, right? The U.S. said, yes, sure. And they immediately started building the infrastructure to provide more LNG to Europe. because they want that. Guess what? No carbon pricing in the US. Do you think that Europe, regardless of what they say, whatever plan they've got ahead for all this, do you think they're going to not accept energy? They don't have their own energy, or not enough of it. Right? Do you think they're going to stop? Do you think that they're going to take less US energy, less US oil or LNG because there's no carbon pricing on it? Of course not. It's ridiculous. That's only in Carney's head. Right? Now, of course, this transition that he talks about in Canada will benefit companies that he's been investing in, obviously, and worked with through Brookfield, maybe personally invested as well. You know, he is the net zero guy, the green technology guy, right? So, but in terms of making Canadian industry more competitive, obviously not. That's just silly. Just not going to happen. It's not real. It's fantasy world stuff. That was my point. All right. We're going to do some more Carney, but I think that we will cut off the YouTube portion of this. Right now, we're streaming on both Rumble, YouTube, X, and Locals. And yeah, we're an hour and a half in. We did about an extra hour than we normally do on the YouTube part of this. We're going to continue streaming on the other platforms, but YouTube, we got to cut off now. So join us over on Rumble is the best place, actually, because there's always a good chat here, and there's always way more people over here, and you'll enjoy it more. So, but you are valued. You are loved, people watching on YouTube right now. But join us over on Rumble. All right. See ya on, I guess, Tuesday. What is it? Sunday? Tuesday. See you on Tuesday.